Hello, everybody, and welcome back to One Hub Racing. Myself and Jono are here for another episode of the Late Night Talk Show, our 15th episode in our 12th season at One Hub Racing. And we headed to the streets of Singapore, the lights, Jono, where you stole the win off me by a tenth and a half of a second in Season 8. It'll never be forgotten. But fond memories of Singapore for yourself. You won every race you participated at One Hub Racing here, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, and as you say, only just though that race. I know it bothers you so much that you just got pipped in that race. I can remember that. I had a 3 second time penalty, I think, didn't I? That you were desperately trying to sort of crawl back the advantage for, and it ended up being just a tenth or two between us at the end. But yeah, I always really enjoyed the track. Obviously, really demanding, and race feels like it goes on forever, to be honest. But I think it's a good circuit because although it's a street circuit, it is reasonably wide. There is a few overtaking opportunities. And yeah, once I got into the rhythm of it, which always took a while because it's a long lap, once I got into it, I always enjoyed it.
It's a track I always as well. I enjoyed. I always found I was quite quick at. But it's as we found out on this game, all the drivers. The one talking point is tire temperatures. You know, they were heating, going over as soon as they go over 106 degrees. You know, you're sliding all over the place, and it forced a lot of the drivers into kind of a strategy they perhaps didn't want to do. But nevertheless, we got perhaps more retirees. We got more retirees in Monza, which is strange, but nevertheless, three good races, and you're one as well in the Pinnacle. I don't think you've had a boring race this season, have you?
No, we haven't. Have we? It's been good all the way through, and Singapore was good again. It was obviously a bit of wet weather thrown in as well in a couple of the races, which obviously makes Singapore all the more difficult if it isn't difficult enough already, and definitely spiced up the strategies and what have you as well. So I think we got good races all throughout, really.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to start with the prestige tier, but first of all, just need to say, well done to our esports racing drivers at One Hub Racing who took part in an esports event yesterday. Where it's a two-part event. Next part is happening on Saturday next week starting at 8 p.m. So make sure you tune in to support One Hub Racing. The guys are currently, as I said, in third. And yeah, well done to Dane, Rafa, Don Call, and Reflow. Alrighty, we'll start with the prestige tier this week, Jono. And Blizzard, I mean, what a drive. 30 seconds.
Yeah, amazing drive. And I think, Odem's mentioned afterwards that he was just, legitimately half a second to three-quarters of a second a lap slower than Blizzard, just in pure pace. And we know how quick Odem's is as well. So, yeah, for him to have that much of an advantage over the field, lap on lap, and, error-free pretty much from what I saw. So it was absolutely dominant drive by Blizzard. We know he can pull those out of the bag, don't we? And perhaps he hasn't done so quite as many times as we thought this season, but that was certainly an absolutely stellar drive.
Yeah, another 25 points cut in the lead of Julian whilst he's away, but he'll be back next week with a vengeance, I imagine, to try and wrap up his first Drivers' World Championship. Mercedes leading the way in the constructors as well. So be interesting to see, when Julian can grab his hands fully on that trophy, as you have done twice yourself, Jonah, with us. Alrighty, Jesse, he's been impressive lately, hasn't he? He finished 30 seconds behind Blizzard, but we can't take away from his performances not only in qualifying but now in the race. He really seems to have found the extra gear to challenge onto that podium.
Yeah, he does, and sort of a bit similar to Lukey, I guess, in the Pinnacle tier. You always get this. A couple of drivers just seem to really come into their own later in the season as they really bed into the game. Perhaps they've just got their head around the setups or how to drive the car or whatever issues they were having early season. They've got their head around it, and yeah, they're unleashing some pace. So not surprising to see some drivers, making big strides, and Jesse's definitely doing that in the prestige tier.
We are going to speak to Rafa, White Eagle, and Mali later on. So once we finish recapping the races, we'll get those drivers into the party and have a chat to them. Odem's on the podium here in Singapore. A couple of penalties, but nevertheless, good drive from him for sixth on the grid. He's really starting to show some maybe consistent form. That's a word that we don't really use with Odem's in the same sentence.
Yeah, and it's definitely been up and down, I guess, his form this season, but not always to his own fault. But we have to say, he hasn't been in the steward's office, I don't think, is he, all season long. So he's not been getting tangled up in those stupid incidents that perhaps, well, he admits himself he's done previously. So I've actually been pretty impressed with him. And, on his day, we know he's got really good pace. And I think he deserved, at Singapore, anyone who finishes on the podium, they've obviously driven a good, clean race to get there. And he did so again.
Let's talk about Rafa. Finished in fourth. He's at the early part of the season he was struggling getting involved in incidents. I feel like since he's started qualifying at the front of the grid, kept it clean on the first lap, he's really able to push. And he's one of our esports racing drivers at One Hub Racing, and his performance has been good as well. The Haas drivers, 2 cars in the top 5. El Kusu, doing a good job to support Jesse up there on the podium. Mick Sendit though, we know how quick he is, but he went through a couple of front wings on Friday night. So easy to do though here at Singapore, isn't it?
Yeah, so easy to do. And of course, that first mistake just usually generates frustration, doesn't it? And then you overdrive the car, perhaps trying to make up for that, and then more incidents come. And I know he got held up in qualifying, didn't he, as well? So that probably put him a bit further down the grid than he would have wanted to be. And so, yeah, perhaps he just wasn't quite in the right mindset for the race, because we know how obviously quick and dominant he can be as well. But if you can come out of a bad race, I guess in sixth, then you're not doing too bad, are you?
Yeah, exactly. Especially in the top prestige tier. Emily in 7th. Sam on his, I believe, second race, scoring his first points at One Hub Racing in 8th position. James Slater, he's always there, isn't he? He never gives up, just James Slater, and no penalties as well to take 9th position. Ollie had a poor race but recovered to finish in 10th to claim the first race. The final point. And the rest of the guys, all DNF'd. So, SOR Lakitu, in the practice session on Thursday, John, the official one, he was so quick, but, it means nothing if you can't complete those, whatever it is, 31 laps, the longest race on the calendar.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, street circuits, 1 lap pace definitely isn't the be all and end all, is it? Obviously helps a lot, but yeah, as you say, you can have all the pace in the world, but if you make a mistake and hit the wall, it all means nothing.
All right, let's head over to the pinnacle tier, where Mali took his first pole position with us this season, and his first win in the pinnacle tier. So congratulations to him. We're going to talk to him in a bit, so we won't talk too much about his race. But John, just quickly, that lap he had to do on the wet track on the dry tires to get round to the pit, the longest lap I imagine of his life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned in commentary at the time how impressed I was actually with that lap, because he was just unlucky that the crossover point came at the wrong time. He just passed the pit entrance and had to go another lap. And I think many drivers would have binned it on that lap. There was absolutely no grip. The car was sliding everywhere. Obviously, he had that big gap to fall back on, but he drove within himself and within the car and got it back without damage. And that was crucial. If he'd have binned the car there or damaged the car there, it could have been a different result. So really impressive how he kept his head on that lap and made it back to the pits.
Bromadinho finishes in second on his debut from 5th on the grid. Did you catch much of his race? Were you impressed with him in his first race? He was very happy afterwards, not just with the result, but the driving, the drivers he was up against, the driving standards, and generally the league. So maybe we'll try and get him in the talk show before the end of the season.
Yeah, he did what you want to do on your debut, didn't he, really? He came in, qualified well, finished the race well. Obviously, 5th is a brilliant result. And, from what we saw on the stream, we did mention that he seemed to be keeping it clean and racing well around other cars. And it was just generally a really, really good debut. And he's fitted in really, really well into the pinnacle tier. And so expect to see him towards the front for the final 6 races.
Alrighty, let's talk about Matt, because he's outscored Sam the last couple of races. Do you think he's finally finding his form, and perhaps now that Sam's comfortable in the Drivers' Championship, he's going to never know, lead the Ferrari team for the rest of the season?
Yeah, maybe so. I think he's had similar to pace to Sam quite often, but in the races he's fallen off a bit, perhaps with tyres or with one thing or another, and Sam's always just had that bit of an advantage. But I think there's very little between them. Perhaps Matt's got on top of those issues slightly now. And obviously Sam as well has had a couple of dodgy races, hasn't he? Obviously binned it in the wall at Monza in qualifying, so had to start from the back there. And again, didn't seem quite his usual self here at Singapore. But obviously he's got that huge buffer, hasn't he, Sam? So he's got to take no risks from here on in. So sixth place for him, still outscoring his championship rival. So I don't think Sam will be too disappointed with sixth either.
Pete, good result for him. Fourth, he often shows so much promise, and something happens to stop him getting those results that his, perhaps his pace warrants. Started from third on the grid, so lost a position, but you have to say a good solid drive from him. 25 seconds off the lead, but he can definitely use that confidence boost. And look at Lukey there again in the top five, a driver perhaps, not there on pace, but he's just consistently performing, and he's going to find himself moving up and up in the Drivers' Championship table.
Yeah, he is. He's always there or thereabouts these days, isn't he? And always seems to have the right strategy. And he was involved in incidents not of his own making earlier in the season in that midfield scrap, but just shows once he's had a few races where he's been able to keep out of trouble, then his strategy and his racecraft, obviously been here a long time, it's paying dividends. And so more often than not now, he's finding himself, well, around that podium area or just below in the top 4 or 5.
White, Sam in sixth position, as we mentioned, outscoring his rivals. White found him in seventh, Scorpion in eighth. Spent half of his race holding Sam up, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He was, that must have been frustrating for Sam, even through the pit stop phase. Went a lap longer, came back out, and there was Scorpion again right in front of him. So, Sam had a long wait before he could find his way past the Toro Rosso.
And then the two Haas boys, ninth and 10th, in the points again. That's going to help their constructors, and shout out to Renault as well. They're going to move up a massive 35 points for them on Friday night. So we'll obviously look forward to seeing how they develop and move up the standings for the rest of the season. Head over to the podium tier. It was another good race for myself and Sean to commentate on. Jaw, a bit like Blizzard, he stormed away, never really looks back. Had a bit of a challenge to begin with, but once he settled in, he really had the pace. And, that's another, 19-point gain, or 19 point of the championship that Danestar has the lead cut. Do you think he can do it? Everyone was saying Danestar had it wrapped up early on, and Jorit's really put in the run of form and the performances to really challenge that.
Yeah, I mean Jorit is, I guess, he's the form man at the moment, isn't he? But I think that gap, what was it, 52 points before this round, so it is coming down, isn't it? And if he can get it anywhere near that, that 25-point mark where you've got that one race where it can make all the difference for the DNF or whatever, then you might start getting interested in Danestar, really start worrying. I think while it's still, over the sort of 40-point mark, it's still looking reasonably good for Danestar. We know he'll keep picking up points. But, definitely second half of the season, he hasn't had it all his own way by any means.
No, he hasn't. Jonas coming from 10th on the grid to finish in second place. Good result from him. He's third in the championship, so again, he's gaining points on Danestar. And Liam finishing in third as well, so a good podium for him. Showed good pace. CXY had to recover to finish in fourth position in the Ferrari. Gaza finished top 5 again. He had to recover as obviously the incident on the first lap where the new McLaren driver, Baboon J, forgot how to use his brakes, Jono. Not what we want to see, and a couple drivers' races affected by that. It's good to see though Gaza, recover to the top 10. Top 5.
Yeah, Gaza kept his head, didn't he, and made his way through into fifth, which I think he was pretty pleased about. As you mentioned, that first lap was a bit crazy, and seeing that McLaren just steaming into the corners. Just watching the stream back today, and Sean was sounding pretty excited about and worried, I guess, about those driving in the opening lap there. But I know it is in the stewards, but I don't think anyone's race was actually ended by that, bar his own. So at least everyone was able to continue, and as you say, Gaza still got P5.
Buffy Dweller finished in sixth position, stopping the race by strategy rather than by his an incident. Danestar struggled with tyre attempts. He finished in seventh position. Stevie finished in eighth, so both Renaults scoring points. Jamie and Oles, the two Haas drivers, coming across the line in formation. Jamie just taking it on penalties, I believe, but from 14th on the grid, we know he was happy with that. Overall, another exciting podium race and another exciting round at Singapore. Jono, round 15. I can't believe how far we are into this season and how little races we have left. And the championship, perhaps in this tier, both the constructors and the drivers, is the one that's really really up in the air. Red Bull haven't been scoring as well as they would have liked recently, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this championship develops.
Yeah, definitely. Both titles are still up for grabs, aren't they? Like you say, in this tier, perhaps more than any other. And Singapore's always one of those sort of milestone races in the season. Once you're through Singapore, you're in the final stretch. Obviously, a few sort of flyaway races then, Russia and Japan and Austin, obviously. And yeah, lots of exciting races to come and some great circuits coming up if you ignore Russia.
All right, let's get some drivers in. Alrighty, we'll wait for the guys to join. Odems, it's not Odems. Reading is hi. Jono, I was just going to ask you. We had a discussion about this privately. Cars retiring on track, either in qualifying or in the race, not in the pits. It's something which is causing issues across all three tiers. It has done, for many seasons, and like the readying up before the race. We're gonna start clamping down on it. Do you want to just perhaps talk about that and why we're doing that?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely frustrating. We know it affected some drivers' races this time out, and we've mentioned it many times, but we just don't want drivers retiring out on circuit, under any circumstances. If you have to retire at all, do it in the pit lane. But in qualifying, there's no need to retire full stop. If you're finished with your laps, just return to the garage and wait in the garage for the end of the session. Don't bother retiring because it distracts other drivers, even if you're not out on track. Obviously, in the race, if you've got to retire, then pull into the pit lane before you do it. And yeah, because it's been a bit of an issue, there'll be notes about it in this drivers' briefing this week. But we will be handing out qualifying bans to drivers who retire incorrectly from either session going forward. So there'll be notes about that. But yeah, we'll be clamping down on it, and qualifying bans will be coming to drivers who don't retire properly.
Alrighty, so make sure you check out the stewards driver briefing ahead of next week's race in, where are we? Russia next week. Your favourite, Jono. Someone, I don't know if they're listening to the stream, but I can hear my lovely voice back. Welcome to the party, White Eagle, Mally, and Rafa. Make sure you all have your audio set to be shared for this party, and we'll get to some questions. White Eagle, we'll start with you. How are you, mate? You okay?
Yeah, I'm well.
Awesome. Me and Jono were just talking before the stream started, when we knew you were coming in, that you're a driver that perhaps is fighting for the edge of the points, but it doesn't change your mindset and how excited and how buzzed you get for the race every single week. What do you put that down to?
I'd probably put it down to, this is my second season, so, last season was, trying to learn everything, and this season is just more of the same, really. But, I mean, the real answer is I put it down to the fact that at the end of the day, it's a game. And it's a game, although it's a league that we're racing in competitively, at the end of the day, you've got to enjoy it in some way, otherwise you're just going to end up taking frustrations out, whatever happens in the race, and then taking it into the real world, and that's just not healthy for anyone.
It definitely isn't. And I think a lot of drivers can look at your attitude and definitely learn from it. We've had drivers over the season, who quit and this and that, and I think I think you're setting a good example for a lot of the drivers in the top tiers as well. All right, Mally, let's talk to you, my good friend Mally. You won in Singapore. Did you enjoy that? And how nervous were you on that lap you had to do when you wanted to come into the pits for inters and it was pretty wet and you were on worn, dry tires?
Well, I wasn't nervous. I was just pissed. I just passed the pit lane and the DRS gets disabled, so I wasn't happy about that. But I knew I had a gap, so I was just taking it cautious and not lose it. And when I crossed the line to win the race, I mean, I was happy, but when I stood up, I felt my butt was hurting so much. I just wasn't happy about that one, and I'm like, I don't want to do simple ever again. That's all.
Did it feel like a really long race from your point of view as you were leading? You had the most to lose.
I mean, I was getting dizzy at the end. Not gonna lie, my eyes were like not even looking properly, pretty much.
Alrighty, Rafa, let's come to you. Well done in the esports event last night, first of all, and we'll continue to try and get that second place next week. How did your race go in Singapore? Me and Jono mentioned that you've really improved as the season's gone on in this prestige tier.
Yeah, my race went, I would say, pretty decent, apart from the part where it was raining in the beginning, because I struggled a lot. My setup wasn't the best for the rain, and unfortunately I hit the wall and got a little bit of wing damage, which costed me a lot of time afterwards. But apart from that, I would say I showed some decent pace and got 12 points, which is always good.
Let's talk about tire temps. They were the talking point in Singapore. Do you think that Singapore is now the last track on the calendar where drivers are going to struggle with that issue?
No, I think in the USA it will be really difficult as well for most people, especially people with a controller. And maybe even Mexico afterwards. But apart from those two tracks, we should be fine to go for the rest of the season.
Awesome stuff. Jonah, do you have a question for each of the boys?
Yeah, I'll go with Mali first then. Obviously, great result at Singapore, and we were talking about when you joined a few races ago, saying that you came in with quite a big reputation and we expected you to be at the front. But obviously, it didn't go really that well in the first few races. But now you've got that win on the board. Do you expect to be able to be up the front for the remaining races?
Well, certainly like to see myself there. At least challenge Dunkel and Sam and Reflow. So yeah, me and Luke here are aiming for fourth in the championship. So if I can be up there, we can get to go. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. And Rafa, obviously, we had a pretty good race at Singapore, but I personally enjoyed and commentating on the stream the defensive driving you were doing early on. I think like a few drivers behind you, and you were defending really hard for lap after lap after lap. Did you enjoy it from the driving point of view? Was it tense? Did you enjoy the defending as well as attacking and going forward?
Yeah, I did. I had a really good battle with Jesse for like 6 or 7 laps. And we always went side by side into, I think, turn 5 it is, after the DRS zone. I went always pretty hard on the brakes and just kept my nose ahead. So yeah, that was what was enjoyable for sure.
Yeah, it was really good to watch. I enjoyed that battle a lot. And question for White Eagle then. Just been looking at the standings, and in the constructors, you're 1 point behind Force India by the look of it. Is the constructors important to you? Are you going to battle hard to try and beat the Force Indias before the end of the season?
Well, yeah, because I personally don't see myself getting inside, top 10 at the moment. As I said, start of the season, I set the target of myself to try and finish around 12th. But obviously, if I can score points anyway, that'll help the constructors massively for Sauber. So obviously, if I can, just try and get inside the top 10 and get points on the board, and if Buffy can also finish as well, then I see no reason why we can't finish above Force India at the end of the season.
Nice one.
Awesome stuff. What you got? I got a question for you. What would you say if you could work on something particularly? What would you say your biggest weakness is that you think you need to improve to help you, consistently score in those points?
I can 100% hit the nail on the head and say pace. I just don't have the race pace that other people have in front of me. I can barely remember a race this season where I have been quick. To be honest, I put a lot of my finishes, if I finish inside the top 10, mainly down to the fact that I have been lucky, maybe with the amount of people who haven't finished in front of me. So yeah, pace is definitely something I know I need to improve on.
Okay, and last one for me. What's been your favorite race so far this season, and what track are you looking forward to the most of what we've got left?
Oh, I would probably say favorite race this season's probably Spain because I think that's been my highest finish this season so far. I think I finished seventh or eighth. But it was just a matter of a case of just hanging in there and just I think I got my tyres right that day. The strategy was right, and yeah, I was really happy because I think that's actually one of my highest ever finishes in the 2 seasons I've been racing so far. The track coming up that I'm most looking forward to.
What have we got?
I'm
We've
probably
got
gonna have to
Russia,
say,
Japan, Mexico, USA, Brazil, and Abu Dhabi.
do you know what? I'm gonna say Japan.
It's a good choice. Good. What do you like the first sector in Japan? Do you find it quite flowing and
Yeah, I like the first sector of Japan because obviously when you're coming down the street and you hit that first corner, if you can nail it, you don't really have to lift off the throttle and you can pretty much go all the way around in one swift movement, which will obviously make it really fun on race night because the amount of people going around that first corner, the amount of incidents we've already seen this season and all across the tiers is going to make it a really interesting race, I think.
awesome stuff? All right. Well, best of luck to you for the rest of the season, Mally. I've got a couple questions for you as well. First of all, you raced obviously with us last season. You decided not to sign up at the beginning for this season. Was it just me that you missed, or was it the league in general?
Not just you and Odoms.
Okay, and
Just you two. I
is
love
it
you.
good to be back? Because after your first few races, you almost thought about packing it in again, but you came back and scored full 25 points for your team.
Yeah, back in Monza, I was like really pissed because you come from the back of the field, that's like, and it's like the 22nd lap, and you just get taken out by a guy. I mean, I'm not blaming him. It was just like he did a mistake. He went into the gravel and he spun and collected me. But like it was really unfortunate for me to be in that situation. So at that time I was really pissed, but I guess I got over it, and yeah, as you said, I'm happy to still be in the league.
Obviously, your teammate Lukey, me and John were talking about him earlier as well. How he's a driver who's not in perhaps the top five pace wise, but he keeps finding himself in there. And you know what, in Monza he got second, 18 points. Are you impressed with his racecraft and race driving to get into the top five on a regular basis recently?
Impressed? I mean, kind of, but I'm expecting more. I'd like to see him like top three every race. That would be awesome.
Awesome stuff. All right, no pressure, Lukey, if you're watching. Rafa, let's come to you. How many races we got left? 6. Can you get a win?
Probably not. I have to be realistic about that and say probably not, because people like Blizzard or Julian, who's probably gonna come back for Russia, are just too quick for my liking. So yeah, probably have
What
to wait on that.
what do you think is that final piece in the puzzle? Because you're top 5 in the tier regularly now. What do you think is that final piece in the puzzle to get you onto that podium every week and perhaps fight for those wins?
The race consistency, for sure. I had a few races this season, um, especially Silverstone and Hungary come to mind, where I was behind either Blizzard or Julian, and I kept it with him for like 4 or 5 laps. But then I slowly started to make small mistakes, which of course lose me time. And yeah, if you fall away from the 1 second window, it's really hard to come back again. So yeah, it's the race consistency for sure.
Awesome stuff. Just finally from myself, for you, Rafa, the esports event, we had part 1 on Saturday night. We've got part 2 next Saturday. First of all, did you enjoy it? We know there were some incidents that, the whole team was caught up in. And secondly, you looking forward to next week, and do you think we can, maybe get that second place in the 5 teams that are competing?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot because the format is pretty unusual with the one-shot qualifying and the 25% race. So that was a new experience, and I quite enjoyed that. And I think if we get a little bit more lucky than we got in the first week, we could definitely get the second place away from TTG.
As long as
yeah,
Odem
looking
stays
forward
away
to
from us, yeah?
Yeah, as long as he keeps it clean with WeFlow next time, we should be fine, yeah.
Awesome stuff. All right, guys, we will leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. Best of luck to, if we don't speak to you, for the remaining 6 races of the season. Hope you can all fulfill your championship ambitions. Jono, thank you for joining me once again. Stewards results will be out on Tuesday as usual. We'll be back with Media Day on the Thursday, and then our races, Podium Tier at 7 p.m, Pinnacle Tier at 8 p.m, and Prestige Tier at 9 p.m. on the Friday night. We head to Russia, and we will see you there. Thank you all for joining.